The moment she smiled, I knew she'd rehearsed it. Not in a cute surprise way, in a lawyer in her head way, like she'd already argued the case, like she'd already won. We were standing in my kitchen because the deed had my name, the mortgage had my name, and the sink still had a chip from when I moved in before I ever met her. Her phone was face down on the counter like it had something to hide. Her hair was still damp from the shower. She smelled like citrus shampoo and confidence. And she said it like she was announcing a weather forecast. I'm not letting go of my ex. Deal with it. She watched my face like she expected the usual. Outrage, bargaining, humiliation. She wanted the messy version of me, the one who begged so she could call me clingy later. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at her for a second longer than normal. Then I said, calm enough to scare myself. Okay? Her mouth lifted, a soft, satisfied smirk. I knew you'd understand, she said, like I just passed a test. I picked up my coffee mug, took one slow sip, and let the heat hit my tongue. Then I put the mug down carefully, like the smallest noise might crack the moment. I'll go solo from here, I said. Her eyebrows pulled together, confused. What does that mean? It means, I said, you keep your ex, I keep my peace. Goodbye. Her face snapped into disbelief, like I'd changed the rules in the middle of the game. You're breaking up with me? She said, too loud for the room. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I just nodded once, like I was confirming a delivery time. Yeah, I said. That's exactly what I'm doing. Her smile fell off her face like a mask slipping. And that's when I noticed something small, something stupidly simple that I'd missed for weeks. Her phone wasn't face down because she was careless. It was face down because she didn't want the screen to light up. Because someone, him, was going to text again. And she didn't want me to see how fast she'd reply. I could have yelled. I could have called her names. I could have thrown a fit she'd later described to her friends as scary. Instead, I walked to the hallway closet and pulled down the duffel bag I used for work trips. She took one step toward me. Are you serious? I unzipped the bag. Completely. You can't just... She made a helpless gesture toward the kitchen, toward the house, toward the idea of us. We lived together. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something inside me go quiet. I live here, I said. You visit? Her cheeks flushed. That's not fair. I laughed once, without humor. Fair is what people say when they're about to lose leverage. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. The silence between us was sharp. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Real. The kind of silence where you realize the person in front of you doesn't actually know you anymore. Or maybe they never did. She tried again, softer. We can talk about it. No, I said. You can talk about it. I'm done being your audience. Her eyes flicked toward her phone like she was already checking how quickly she could replace the scene I wasn't giving her. Then she said the line she thought would pull me back in. You're overreacting. I stopped packing and looked up. Listen carefully, I said. This is the opposite of overreacting. This is me reacting exactly once. She crossed her arms. So what? You're just leaving. I zipped the bag halfway. I'm doing what I should have done the first time you made me feel like a temporary option. She scoffed, like she was bored. Fine, she said. Go, but don't come crawling back. I slid the duffel strap over my shoulder. I walked toward the front door, and that's when she said the quiet part out loud, because she couldn't help herself. You won't last, she said. You need me. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. I didn't turn around. I just said, you're about to learn what I needed. Then I left. And behind me, in the house that still smelled like citrus shampoo and arrogance, she made the first mistake. She didn't follow. She didn't fight. She didn't even look afraid. Because she thought the story ended there. She thought this was the breakup chapter. She didn't realize this was the beginning of the part where I stopped being polite. I drove without music. That's how I knew I was serious. When I'm upset, I usually fill the car with noise. A podcast, a playlist, anything to stop the thoughts from stacking up like boxes in a hallway. But that night, I let the thoughts come. I let them line up. I let them talk. Because the truth was, this didn't start in the kitchen. It started in tiny moments that looked harmless. A random coffee run that took too long. A phone turned away when I walked into the room. A new laugh I hadn't heard before. Brighter, younger, practiced. A name she'd suddenly stopped saying. Let's call her Sloane. Not because it's romantic, because it fits her. Clean edges, expensive taste, always a little bored, like she's doing you a favor by being present. And her ex, his name was Graham. I'd met him once. One time. A friendly meetup that wasn't friendly at all. It was a demonstration. He shook my hand like he was checking the quality of something he might buy later. He looked me up and down like my shirt might tell him how long I'd last. And when he smiled, it wasn't warm. It was the smile of a man who thinks he can take what he wants because he's taken it before. At the time, I told myself I was being paranoid. Because that's what decent people do. Decent people assume the best until the worst kicks the door in. I parked outside my friend Evan's duplex. Evan answered the door in socks, holding a takeout container like he'd been eating straight from it. He took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. He just stepped aside and said, "Guest room's made." That's another way you know someone's real. They don't feed you speeches, they feed you space. I dropped the duffel on the bed and sat on the edge like my body had forgotten how to do normal things. Evan leaned in the doorway. "Want to talk?" I shook my head. "Not yet." He nodded like he understood exactly. "Beer?" "Yeah." He handed me a bottle and sat on the floor with his back against the wall. For a while we didn't speak. Then he said, "You're calm." "I'm not calm," I said. "I'm focused." "On what?" I stared at the label on the bottle until the letters blurred. "On making sure I don't do anything stupid," I said. Evan snorted. "That ship sailed when you dated Sloane." I almost smiled. Almost. Then I said, "I'm not going to beg. I'm not going to scream. I'm not going to chase. I'm just going to fix what I ignored." "Like what?" Evan asked. I took a sip. The beer tasted like metal and reality. "Like the fact that my name is on everything," I said, and I treated it like it was ours. Evan's eyebrows lifted. "Ah." "Yeah," I said. "Ah." Because here's the thing. Sloane wasn't just my girlfriend, she was my partner, at least on paper. Not married, no shared last name, no dramatic courtroom scenes, but intertwined enough that pulling apart would hurt, unless you did it clean. And I was the one who knew how to do clean. I worked in operations for a mid-sized property management group. My job was boring to people who love drama and thrilling to people who love control. Contracts, access logs, lease compliance, vendor accounts, payment trails. What I did all day was basically this. Make sure everything can be proven. And if it can be proven, it can be enforced. Evan watched me think. "You're plotting." "No," I said. "I'm correcting." Same thing with nicer shoes. I didn't argue, because in my head, I could already see the shape of it. Not revenge with fists. Not revenge with threats. Not revenge with melodrama. Revenge with paper. Revenge with timing. Revenge that looks boring right up until the moment the other person realizes they can't talk their way out of it. I finished the beer. I set the bottle down. And in the quiet of Evan's guest room, I made myself a promise I would not break. I was going to walk away with my dignity, and she was going to learn what it costs to treat a good man like a placeholder. The next morning, I didn't text her. I didn't post anything. I didn't call her friends. I didn't do what people do when they want witnesses. I did what I always do when something needs to be handled. I made a list. The list wasn't emotional, it was practical. 1. Remove access. 2. Separate accounts. 3. Document everything. 4. End shared obligations. 5. Keep my mouth shut until the moment it matters. I sat at Evan's kitchen table with my laptop open. Evan poured coffee and watched like he was observing a controlled burn. "You're really doing it," he said. "I'm already doing it," I said. First, my house. Sloane had a key. She had a garage code. She had app access to the smart lock because I'd added her when things were good. I logged in. I removed her access, changed the codes, generated a new guest pass for Evan in case I needed him. Then I called a locksmith. Not for drama, for speed. I scheduled a rekey for that afternoon. Next, accounts. We didn't have a joint bank account because I'm not reckless. But we had shared payment connections, streaming services, utilities, one credit card she was an authorized user on. I removed her from the card. I changed the passwords. I updated the billing info. I made sure every change generated a time-stamped confirmation email. Receipts aren't just for stores. Receipts are for reality. Evan whistled softly. "You're serious." I didn't look up. I'm calm serious. My phone buzzed once, a text from Sloane. "Sloane, are you coming back tonight?" No apology. No. Can we talk? Just a question like I was a late delivery. I waited exactly 5 minutes. not to play games, to make sure my reply didn't come from the old version of me. Then I typed, "Me. I'm getting my things later. Please don't touch anything that's mine." 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally. Sloane. "You're being dramatic." I stared at the screen. I didn't reply. Because the truth is, when someone calls you dramatic for protecting yourself, they're just mad you stopped being convenient. At noon, I drove back to the house. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car and watched the front window. I watched the curtains. I watched for movement. Not because I expected a crime scene, because I expected a performance. Sloane loved performances. And sure enough, when I opened the door with my key, she was already in the living room, dressed, makeup done, sitting upright like she'd been waiting for a camera cue. "You're really doing this," she said, voice low. I walked past her. "I told you," I said. "I'm going solo." She followed me down the hallway. "Over him?" I stopped at my closet and pulled out a suitcase. "Not over him," I said. "Over you." She blinked like she didn't understand the difference. "That's not fair," she said again. Same word, same weapon. I looked at her. "You keep using that word like it's a spell." Her jaw tightened. "Graham is part of my life. You knew that." "No," I said. I knew he existed. I didn't agree to share space with him. "You're insecure," she snapped. I slid drawers open and started taking out my shirts. "If you need to call me insecure so you don't have to call yourself careless, go ahead." She stepped closer. "He's not a threat." That's when I turned and finally looked her straight in the eyes. "If he's not a threat," I said, "why did you announce it like a power move?" Her lips parted. No answer. Because she knew what she'd done. She'd tested me. She'd pushed the line to see if I'd stay, and when I didn't, she didn't have a script. I wheeled the suitcase into the hallway. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, like she was trying to look unimpressed. "You're going to regret this," she said. I nodded. "Maybe, but I won't regret respecting myself." She laughed, a sharp little sound. "So what, you'll just kick me out?" I paused. And here's where the story becomes very simple. I didn't have to kick her out, because she didn't live here. Not legally. She had never signed a lease. She had never been added to the deed. She had mail delivered here, sure. She had clothes in the closet, but none of that beats paperwork. "I'm not kicking you out," I said. "I'm asking you to leave." Her eyes narrowed. "And if I don't?" I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and held it up. "I won't argue," I said. "I'll just handle it the way the system handles it." She froze. She wasn't used to systems. She was used to men. Men who bend, men who yell, men who give her a story she can edit later. But a system doesn't care how pretty your smile is. A system just follows steps. She swallowed. "You wouldn't." I stepped closer, not threatening, just present. "I already did," I said. "Your access is removed, locks are changing, and I'm documenting this conversation." Her eyes flashed. "You're recording me?" "I'm recording myself," I said, so I remember exactly who said what. That hit her, because it's hard to manipulate a moment when you know it's being preserved. She exhaled through her nose, then lifted her chin. "Fine, I'll go." She walked into the bedroom and began pulling things into a bag with angry jerks. As she passed me in the hallway, she leaned close and whispered, "You're going to be alone." I didn't flinch. I just whispered back, "Watch how peaceful that looks." She slammed the front door on her way out. The house went quiet, and for the first time in months, the quiet didn't feel like punishment. It felt like relief. 2 days later, Graham showed up at my office. Not my company office. My personal office. The small corner suite I rented downtown for side consulting work. The kind of space you get when you don't want clients in your house and you don't want your business in your personal life. I hadn't told Sloane where it was, which meant either she did, or he did what men like him do. He found it. He stood in the lobby like he belonged there, button-down shirt, good shoes, a smile that practiced in mirrors. He walked up to my door and knocked like he was doing me a favor. I opened it and didn't invite him in. He looked past me into the room anyway. "Man," he said, grinning, "you're really going through with it." I didn't ask how he knew. I already knew. "Sloane okay?" he asked, tone fake concerned. I stared at him for a beat. Then I said, "You're standing outside my office talking about my girlfriend like she's your shared subscription." His smile flickered, just a hair. "Relax," he said. "I'm just checking in." "Why?" I asked. "Because you care? Or because you want to see if the door is open? His grin sharpened. Maybe both. There it was, not even subtle. He leaned closer, lowering his voice like we were brothers sharing a secret. You did the right thing, he said. She needs someone who understands her. I laughed, quiet and short. You mean someone who lets you orbit? He lifted his hands. Hey, she chose me first. I looked at him, and in that moment, I understood something clear as daylight. Graham didn't think he was doing anything wrong, because in his head, women were trophies you could reclaim, and men like me were just the temporary stand holding the prize. He tilted his head. Look, I didn't come here to fight. I nodded. Good. He pointed a finger lightly toward my chest, almost friendly. I came to tell you to back off, he said. She's upset. She's saying you're making things hard. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I'm not making things hard, I said. I'm making them accurate. He frowned. What does that mean? It means, I said, you can play whatever game you want with her, but you don't come to my place of business and tell me how to live. His jaw tightened. You're acting tough. I shrugged. I'm acting adult. He leaned in again, voice colder now. You know what your problem is? He said. You think being calm makes you strong. I smiled slightly. No. Being calm just makes it easier to aim. His eyes narrowed. Is that a threat? I shook my head. It's a promise to myself. I don't do drama. I do decisions. He held my gaze for a second longer than comfortable. Then he smiled again, but it wasn't friendly anymore. It was warning. You're going to regret messing with her, he said. I nodded. Maybe. He started to walk away, then paused and looked back. And one more thing, he said. She told me you can be controlling. I laughed, louder this time. Of course she did, I said. Because when someone loses access, they call it control. He didn't reply. He left. And as the lobby door shut behind him, I didn't feel fear. I felt something better. Clarity. Because now I knew Graham wasn't just in her life. He was in her mouth, in her stories, in the way she framed me, which meant the next part wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about reputation. And reputation is something I can protect with precision. That evening, I sat at my desk and started a file. Not a revenge folder like a cartoon villain. A real file, a timeline. Every date, every message, every event. Because the difference between chaos and consequence is documentation. I opened my email. Sloane had sent me dozens of messages over the last year, requests, confirmations, little agreements made in casual language that still counted as agreements. I searched her name. I saved what mattered. Then I opened my phone logs. I didn't need to spy. I didn't need to hack anything. Because I wasn't chasing hidden secrets. I was building a clear picture of what was already visible. And then I remembered the one thing she'd said in the kitchen that hadn't been emotional at all. It had been strategic. I'm not letting go. Deal with it. That wasn't just a confession. It was a declaration of priority, which meant she'd been using my stability as a base while keeping her old chaos on standby. And I started wondering what else she'd treated like a base. Like my address, like my credit line, not like my professional network, like the vendor accounts she'd had access to because she'd helped with my side work sometimes. Answering calls, scheduling a few appointments, sending a couple emails from my tablet when I was driving. She'd had convenience. And convenience always leaves fingerprints. I checked my client calendar, I checked my outgoing invoices, then I checked the payment platform I used for consulting. And there it was. A recent payment request sent to a client. One I hadn't sent. Not huge, not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to make my stomach go cold in a new way. Because it wasn't about money. It was about nerve. I called the client immediately. Hey, I said, keeping my voice casual. Quick question. Did you get a payment request from me yesterday? A pause. Yeah, the client said. I thought it was weird. It came at night. I swallowed. You didn't pay it, did you? No, he said. I was going to ask you today. I exhaled slowly. Good. Don't pay it. It wasn't me. Another pause. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. Just cleaning up access issues. That night I changed every password again. I added two-factor authentication. I removed every device I didn't recognize. I locked my business down like a storm was coming, and I realized something that made my hands go still on the keyboard. Sloane hadn't just been careless with my heart. She'd been careless with my name, and if someone is willing to misuse your name, they're willing to do worse, quietly, slowly, smiling the whole time. That's when revenge stopped being emotional. It became ethical. Because protecting myself wasn't just about pride anymore. It was about preventing her from leaving damage behind like broken glass for me to step on later. I finished the file. I labeled it with a boring name. Account access. Timeline. Boring names don't draw attention. Boring names win. Sloane didn't stay quiet. She couldn't. Silence doesn't feed her. So she started telling people a story. A story where I was cold. A story where I abandoned her. A story where Graham was just a friend and I was jealous. I found out because my phone started buzzing with messages from mutual friends. People who suddenly wanted to check in, which is what people say when they've already heard something ugly. One of them, Tessa, asked me to meet for coffee. I agreed. Not because I wanted to argue, because I wanted to see the shape of the rumor. We sat at a cafe with uncomfortable chairs and bright lighting that made everyone look tired. Tessa leaned forward. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. She hesitated. "Sloane says you freaked out." I nodded slowly. "Of course she did." Tessa frowned. "So, what happened?" I didn't dump every detail. I didn't rant. I slid my phone across the table and showed her one message, just one. A screenshot. Sloane's words. "I'm not letting go of my ex. Deal with it." Tessa's eyes widened. "That's blunt," she said. "Yep," I said. "That's what honesty looks like when someone thinks you won't leave." Tessa swallowed. "She said it wasn't like that." I took my phone back. It was exactly like that. Tessa looked down at her coffee. "So you just ended it?" "I ended the version where I compete for my own relationship," I said. She nodded slowly. Then she said, "Sloane also said you were trying to ruin her." I smiled faintly. "I'm not trying to ruin her. I'm trying to stop her from using me." Tessa looked up. "Graham's been around a lot?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said carefully, "He showed up at my office." Her mouth opened. "Seriously?" "Seriously." Tessa sat back, the rumor shifting in real time behind her eyes. "Okay," she said quietly. "That's not normal." "No," I agreed. "It's not." That coffee meeting did something important. It proved the truth didn't need volume. It needed witnesses. And once one witness sees the real shape of the thing, the story stops being Sloane's to edit. By that evening, my phone buzzed again, this time from Sloane. "Sloane, stop showing people messages." "Sloane, you're embarrassing me." I stared at the screen, and for the first time, I felt actual amusement. Because there it was again. She wasn't sorry. She was inconvenienced. I replied with one line. "Me. Don't do things you'd be embarrassed to have quoted." 3 dots appeared, then nothing. That's the thing about people like Sloane. They love narratives, but they hate evidence. 2 nights later, I went back to my house to pick up the last box of work files I'd left in the garage. It was late, cold, quiet. The streetlights made everything look like a staged set. I opened the garage door and froze. Sloane was there, not alone. Graham leaned against my workbench like it was his, like my tools were props. Sloane stood with her arms crossed, eyes sharp. She looked proud of herself, like she'd arranged a surprise party. "Hey," she said, sweet as poison. "We need to talk." I stepped inside slowly and let the garage door shut behind me. Graham smiled. "Look who's back." I didn't look at him. I looked at Sloane. "Why is he here?" She shrugged. "Support." "That's not support," I said. "That's intimidation dressed as confidence." Graham chuckled. "Man, you're really dramatic." I held up my hand without looking at him, like I was stopping traffic. "This is between me and Sloane," I said. Sloane's eyes narrowed. "No, it's not. You're making it everyone's problem." I took a breath. I kept my voice flat. "You're in my garage, with your ex, after telling me you won't let go of him, and you want to talk about me making things a problem." She stepped closer. "You're acting like I cheated." I didn't flinch. "You acted like loyalty was optional." Graham pushed off the bench. "You can't talk to her like that." I finally turned and looked at him. "Watch me," I said. His smile dropped. "Excuse me?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Sloane's eyes flicked to it immediately. I didn't point it at them. I didn't wave it around. I just held it where they could see it. "I'm here for a box," I said. "And then you're leaving." Sloane laughed. "You can't make me leave." I nodded. "Correct. I don't have to make you." Graham frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said, I already gave you both enough rope. Now you can decide whether you want to keep standing in my property while I call the non-emergency line. Sloane's smile twitched. You wouldn't do that. I stared at her. You still don't understand who I am. I tapped my screen. Slow, deliberate. Graham took a step forward. Put the phone down. I didn't move. Take another step, and I will do what I should do with any stranger advancing on me in my own garage. I will call for help, and I will not argue with you while I do it. The air shifted, not in a movie way, in a real way, where someone realizes they misjudged the situation and there might be consequences that don't care about ego. Sloane spoke quickly, trying to regain control. Fine, we'll go. Graham's jaw clenched. Sloane. Now, she snapped at him, losing her pretty voice for a second. That was the moment I saw it. She didn't want Graham there because she loved him. She wanted him there because she thought he made her powerful. But power borrowed from someone else is flimsy. It cracks under pressure. They walked out together, and Sloane turned at the door. This isn't over, she said. I lifted the box I'd come for. It is for me, I said. That's the only ending I owe you. They left. The garage felt colder without them, like the place itself had exhaled. I locked the door, I loaded the box in my trunk, and as I closed the trunk lid, I noticed something on the driveway near the curb. A small envelope, no stamp, no address, just my name, written in neat handwriting. I picked it up, and I felt the first real spark of something like adrenaline. Because whatever was inside that envelope, it meant someone else had entered the story. Someone watching. Someone who knew where I lived. I opened it right there under the streetlight. Inside was a single printed photo. A photo of Sloane and Graham sitting close together at a restaurant patio, her hand on his knee, and on the back, in the same neat handwriting, "You deserved to know." I stood there, photo in my hand, and the night suddenly felt very awake. Not because I was shocked, because I was confirmed. And confirmation is fuel. I didn't send the photo to anyone. I didn't confront her with it. I didn't call Graham. Because the person who sent it didn't want peace. They wanted chaos. And I don't dance to other people's music. Instead, I did something better. I updated my file. Added the photo. Not as emotional evidence. As context. Then I asked myself the only question that mattered. Where is Sloane vulnerable? Legally and practically, without me doing anything shady. The answer came fast. Sloane had a job she cared about more than she cared about love. She worked in client relations at a boutique finance firm, small enough that reputation mattered, big enough that mistakes got handled quietly. And for months, she'd used my house as her stable address. Her employer had it, her HR had it, her payroll had it, her emergency contact forms had it. She also had a company laptop that had been connected to my Wi-Fi, which meant her device logs, connection history, all of it, was tied to my network at some point. If she tried anything with my business accounts again, it would leave a trail. And another thing, she had signed a cohabitation agreement. She thought was a joke when we moved in together, because my attorney friend had advised me years ago to protect my home. It wasn't romantic, but neither are consequences. The agreement stated, in plain language, she had no claim to the property. She acknowledged she was not a tenant. She agreed to remove belongings within a specified time after separation. She agreed not to represent herself as an owner. At the time she signed it, she rolled her eyes and said, "You're so intense." I remembered how she laughed. I remembered how she didn't read it. That night, I emailed her one message. No insults, no emotional paragraphs, just a professional notice. Me. Per our agreement, please schedule a time within the next 7 days to remove any remaining belongings. After that, items will be handled as abandoned property according to the terms you signed. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Her name on the screen. I let it ring. She called again. I let it ring. Then a text. Sloane. You're really doing this? Over a friend? I waited, then I typed. Me. I'm doing this because I'm done being treated like a convenience. No reply, but I knew she'd read it. Because she didn't love me, she loved access. And I was cutting it off, piece by piece. 3 days later, Sloane requested a meeting. Not a talk. A meeting, at a public place, a restaurant near downtown with big windows and expensive chairs. She wanted witnesses so she could behave, then tell everyone she was reasonable. I agreed, because public places are safe, and because I wasn't afraid of her anymore. I arrived early and sat facing the entrance. When she walked in, she looked perfect. Of course she did. Graham wasn't with her, but I could feel him hovering in the background like a ghost with a nice haircut. She slid into the seat across from me and offered a small smile. "I've been thinking," she said. "I'm sure you have," I said. Her eyes tightened. "I don't like how you're handling this." "I'm not handling it for your comfort," I said. She inhaled like she was about to launch into a speech. Then she softened her voice and said, "We don't have to be enemies." I leaned back slightly. "We're not enemies. We're just not together." She blinked. "That's cold." "No," I said. "That's accurate." She reached across the table like she might touch my hand. I moved my hand to my lap. She noticed. Her smile faltered, then returned. Brighter, forced. "Graham and I are complicated," she said. I nodded. "I'm not interested in your complications." "You're acting like I chose him," she said. "You announced him," I said. "That's the same thing." Her eyes flashed. "You didn't even fight for me." I stared at her, and the truth came out of my mouth before I could polish it. "I didn't fight," I said, "because I'm not competing for a person who enjoys being chased." Her face hardened. "That's not fair." I exhaled slowly. Then I said, very quietly, "Sloane, I'm going to say something, and you're going to hate it." She lifted her chin. "Say it." "You didn't want love," I said. "You wanted safety, and you wanted excitement on the side. You wanted me as the base, and him as the spark." She stared, and in her eyes I saw anger, and something else. Fear, because I'd named it. And when you name something accurately, it loses its magic. She leaned forward. "You're trying to paint me like some kind of villain." I shrugged. "I'm not painting you. I'm describing you." Her voice rose. "You don't get to judge me." I lowered my voice even more. "I'm not judging. I'm choosing." People at nearby tables glanced over. Sloane noticed and forced her voice down again. "Fine," she said through her teeth. "What do you want?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I want my life back," I said. "Cleanly." She laughed, but it sounded brittle. So dramatic. I didn't flinch. Then I reached into my jacket pocket and slid a folded piece of paper onto the table. She looked at it suspiciously. "What's that?" "A copy of our agreement," I said, with the timeline highlighted. "You have 4 days left." Her face colored. "You can't do that," she hissed. "I can," I said. "I already did." She grabbed the paper, scanning it fast. Her mouth tightened. Then she looked up and said the line that told me she still didn't understand consequences. "You're going to regret this," she said. I nodded once. "Maybe, but you're going to remember it." She stood abruptly, chair scraping. "Good luck finding someone else," she snapped. I stood too, not aggressive, just firm. "I'm not looking," I said. "I'm building." She glared. Then she leaned in and said, low, venomous, "Graham says you're nothing without me." I smiled, and I said softly, "Tell Graham I said thank you." Her eyes narrowed. "For what?" "For showing me," I said, "exactly who you become when you think you're untouchable." She stormed out, and as the door closed behind her, I sat back down. My hands weren't shaking, my voice hadn't cracked, because this wasn't heartbreak anymore. This was cleanup. The next day, my security camera app pinged me while I was at work. Motion detected at my front door. I opened the feed. Sloane stood on my porch with a small suitcase and a confident posture. She typed in the old code. It didn't work. She tried again. Still no. She knocked, hard. Then she did something that made my jaw tighten. She pulled out her phone and started filming. A performance. She wanted footage of me locking her out. She wanted her version of victimhood recorded in high definition. I didn't rush home. I didn't call her. I called my attorney friend Caleb, not for drama, for the correct next move. Caleb listened and said, calm as always, "Do not engage directly. You have the agreement. You gave notice. You changed access. Good. If she escalates, call local assistance. Keep everything documented." I said, "She's filming." Caleb snorted. "Great. Let her." I watched the camera as Sloane paced, talking to her phone like she was narrating a documentary. Then another figure walked into frame. Graham, of course. He looked straight at the camera, then at my door, then back at the camera like he wanted to be seen. He knocked once, loud. Then he tried the handle. My hands went cold, not with panic, with focus. Because trying the handle wasn't just rude, it was an action. And actions have consequences. I called the non-emergency line. I reported 2 people attempting to gain access to my home, one of whom was not authorized. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't add drama. I just stated facts. Then I did one more thing. I called Sloane's HR department. Not to rant, not to destroy her, to protect myself, because I'd learned she'd already tried to misuse my business payment platform. If she was now escalating into filmed confrontations and attempted access, I needed a boundary on record. I asked for an email address to send a simple statement that she was no longer allowed on my property, and that I requested no further contact through company channels. They gave it to me. I wrote one paragraph. Professional, dry, fact-based, and I attached the signed agreement page with her signature visible. That wasn't revenge, that was insurance. 20 minutes later, the camera feed showed a patrol car pulling up. An officer spoke to them on the porch. Sloane gestured wildly, still filming. Graham leaned in, talking too close to the officer's face in that confident way men do when they think uniforms are props. The officer held up a hand. Sloane's posture changed. The officer looked at paperwork, because I'd already emailed it to the responding unit through the portal they provided. Not a trick. A system. Sloane's shoulders stiffened. Then, on camera, I saw the moment her brain caught up to reality. The officer wasn't there to validate her story. He was there to enforce boundaries. Sloane said something I couldn't hear. The officer shook his head once. Graham's hands went out in an exaggerated, "come on" gesture. The officer pointed toward the sidewalk, directing them away from the door. Sloane's face twisted. Not heartbreak. Humiliation. She turned, still filming, and for a second, her eyes locked with the camera. My camera. And I saw something clear behind her anger. She wasn't upset I'd ended the relationship. She was upset I'd ended her access. She and Graham walked away. The patrol car stayed for a moment, then left. The porch went empty. And my house, my life, stayed quiet. That should have been the ending. But Sloane wasn't done. People like her never stop at losing. They stop when they're exposed. That evening, I got an email from Sloane's firm. A meeting request. Subject line, clarification of reported conduct. I stared at it for a long moment. Not because I was scared, because I knew exactly what she'd done. She'd tried to get ahead of the story. She'd tried to label me as a problem before the facts could label her, so I accepted the meeting. Not because I wanted to fight, because if someone tries to turn your calm into a weapon against you, you show them what calm really is. Prepared. The meeting was virtual. 3 people on the call, an HR manager, a compliance officer, and Sloane. Camera on, posture perfect, eyes a little too bright. She looked like she'd practiced looking wounded. The HR manager began with a soft voice. "We're here to understand a situation that may be impacting workplace boundaries." I nodded. "Understood." Sloane spoke quickly. "He's been harassing me, sending messages, threatening to ruin me, locking me out. He's obsessed with my past relationship." I didn't react. I let her finish. Then I said, "May I share my screen?" The compliance officer nodded. "Yes." I shared my screen. First, the message where she declared in writing that she was keeping her ex and I should accept it. Then, my reply, calm, short, clear. Then, my notice referencing our signed agreement. Then, the time-stamped record of her attempted access to my home. Then, the security camera clip. No sound, just the visual of her and Graham on my porch. Graham trying the handle. Sloane's face changed in real time. The compliance officer leaned forward. The HR manager blinked rapidly. I kept my voice even. "Oh, I'm not here to damage Sloane's career. I'm here to create a boundary and protect my name and property. I have not threatened her. I have not contacted her through workplace channels. I have only responded to direct contact and provided notice per a signed agreement." Sloane cut in, voice sharp. "He's twisting everything." I didn't look at her. I looked at the camera. "I'd like to add one more item," I said. "This is important for my protection." The compliance officer said, cautious, "Go ahead." I opened the payment platform screen. I showed the unauthorized payment request that had been sent to my client. I showed the device log. I showed the timestamp. I showed the location marker tied to my home Wi-Fi. I said, this request was sent from a device connected to my network at a time I was not using my account. I'm not accusing anyone on this call. I'm showing that my identity and business accounts have been put at risk during the breakup. Silence. The compliance officer's face went tight. "Can you email that evidence to me?" "Yes," I said. "Immediately after this call." Sloane's lips parted. Her eyes were wide now, not angry, alarmed, because this wasn't about her love life anymore. This was about a professional boundary and a documented action, and the system doesn't care about her smile. The HR manager said carefully, "Sloane, did you have access to his business accounts?" Sloane's voice went small. I sometimes helped him. The compliance officer asked, "Did you send that request?" Sloane shook her head too fast. "No." I didn't accuse. I didn't push. I just let the moment sit there like a weight. Because the most powerful move isn't yelling. It's presenting evidence and letting adults do adult math. The compliance officer said, "We will investigate. Sloane, you are instructed not to contact him further and not to approach his residence. Do you understand?" Sloane stared at the screen like she didn't recognize the world anymore. "Yes," she whispered. Then she snapped her eyes to me. "You planned this." I kept my face neutral. "No," I said. "You did. I just stopped pretending it wasn't happening." The HR manager ended the call a minute later. Sloane's camera went dark first. Mine stayed on. Not because I needed to win, because I needed the record. When the call ended, I sat alone in my office, hands resting on the desk. And my phone buzzed. One text. From an unknown number. "Unknown. You're welcome. She's done this before." I stared at it. My throat tightened. Because suddenly I understood who sent the envelope photo. Not a random person, not a stranger. Someone who'd been in the fallout before me. Someone who watched her repeat the pattern and decided not to stay silent this time. I typed back, "Me. Who is this?" The reply came fast. "Unknown. Someone who paid for her smile. Now you don't have to." I leaned back slowly. Outside my window, the city looked normal. Cars, lights, people walking dogs like nothing in the world was breaking. And yet I felt something settle in my chest. Heavy, final, clean. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't theatrical. It was surgical. Sloane wanted a story where I was the villain. Instead, she got a record where she was the risk. And Graham, the confident shadow, got exactly what he deserved. A front row seat to the moment his favorite toy stopped working. I didn't text Sloane again. I didn't need to. Because the last message wasn't mine. It was reality, delivered on time. And the most jaw-dropping part, the part that would stay with her, was that I never raised my voice, I never begged, I never chased. I just closed the doors she thought would always stay open. I shut down her access. I protected my name, and I walked away, clean. I looked at the unknown number again, then set the phone down. In the quiet, I said it out loud, just to myself. "You keep your ex," I whispered. I kept my peace. And for the first time in a long time, the peace didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like power. It started with a screenshot Evan sent me at 7:18 a.m. A long social media post from Sloane. Black text on a white background. The classic "I'm brave enough to speak my truth" layout. She didn't use my name. She didn't need to. She wrote about control, about emotional intimidation, about a man who weaponizes paperwork. And then she added the line that told me she wasn't trying to heal. She was trying to recruit. If you've ever been with someone like this, you know how scary calm can be. Scary calm, that was her angle. Make my discipline sound like danger. Evan texted, "You want me to comment?" I typed back, "No, don't touch it," because comments are food, and she was hungry. Instead, I opened my file and added the post. Time-stamped, archived. Then I made one phone call, this one to a reputation attorney Caleb recommended. A woman named Mara with a voice like a closed door. Mara listened quietly while I explained, then asked one question. "Did she name you?" "No." "Did she claim crimes?" "No." "Did she contact your employer?" "Not yet." Mara's tone stayed flat. "Then you don't panic. You prepare. We send a formal notice to stop defamation by implication, and we send it in a way that doesn't look emotional." I stared at my desk. "How do we make it not look emotional?" I asked. Mara said, "We use her own words, and we request a correction, not revenge." That's when I realized something. Sloane wasn't a hurricane. She was a fog machine. She didn't destroy things directly. She clouded them until people tripped on their own assumptions. So I wasn't going to scream into the fog. I was going to turn on the lights. By noon, Mara had drafted a clean letter. Factual, specific, calm. It didn't threaten. It didn't insult. It didn't beg. It just stated the relationship ended. I requested no contact. Her statements were misleading and potentially harmful. She must stop referencing me in a way that invites harassment. We sent it certified and by email. And then I went back to work like nothing happened. Because the best part of discipline is this. You can do the right thing and still sleep at night. That evening, I stopped at a grocery store on my way home. Normal errand, normal lights. Normal people comparing avocados like it was a national policy decision. I was halfway down the aisle when I felt it. The shift. That little pressure in the air when someone steps into your space and thinks you'll move first. I turned. Graham stood there with a cart, smiling like we were old friends. "Hey," he said. "Didn't think you'd show your face?" I looked at him for a beat. Then I kept my voice low. "Don't follow me." He laughed. "Relax. I just want to talk." "No," I said. "You want a scene." His smile tightened. "You sent her a legal letter." "I didn't," I said. "My attorney did." He leaned closer. "You're trying to ruin her." I shook my head slightly. "I'm trying to stop her from ruining me." "That's dramatic," he said. I glanced down at his cart. Energy drinks, protein bars, a bouquet of flowers like he'd picked them up to look like a good guy. He noticed my eyes and smirked. "Yeah, she's had a rough week." I nodded once. "Then maybe stop making it worse by showing up everywhere." He stepped closer again. Close enough that someone passing by would assume we knew each other well. "Here's what you're going to do," he said quietly. "You're going to back off. You're going to stop sending things to her job. You're going to let her live." I stared at him, and then I did something that surprised him. I smiled, not friendly, not angry, just certain. "Graham," I said, "you came into my garage. You came to my office. You came to my house. Now you're in a grocery store trying to threaten me." His eyes narrowed. I raised my phone, not recording him, just holding it up like a mirror. "I have a record of everything," I said, "and you keep volunteering new material." He scoffed. "You don't have anything." I nodded toward the security cameras above aisle 6. "You sure?" I asked. His jaw clenched. I lowered my voice even more. "Walk away, right now, because I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to document you." He stared at me like he couldn't decide if I was bluffing. Then he did what insecure men do when they can't win clean. He went for cheap power. "Her friends all think you're the problem," he said. "They're laughing at you." I didn't flinch. I just said, "If that's true, then you shouldn't be here." His smile twitched. Because he knew it wasn't about friends. It was about control. I took one step sideways, giving him a clear path to leave. He hesitated, then pushed his cart away, muttering something under his breath. He didn't touch me, he didn't shout. Because bullies hate cameras, and they hate calm more than they hate conflict. I finished my shopping, paid, and walked out, and when I got in my car, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Unknown, he's panicking. That's good. Stay quiet. This time, I didn't ask who it was. I already had a guess. The next morning, I got an email from Sloane's firm. Not about me, about her. Subject line, required meeting, access and conduct review. My stomach didn't jump. It settled, because I knew what happened when compliance people see logs. Sloane had gambled with systems, and systems don't gamble back. They just report. 2 hours later, the unknown number texted again. Unknown. She's blaming you for everything. She always does that at the end. I stared at the message for a long moment, then finally typed, "Me. Tell me who you are." The reply came slower this time. Unknown. My name is Harper. I used to work with her. I used to cover for her. I'm done. Harper. Not an ex. Not Graham's rival. A former co-worker. The kind of person who'd watch Sloane run the same play in a workplace where niceness is often forced. I typed, "Why help me?" Harper replied, "Because she doesn't just hurt people. She uses them. Then she rewrites them." I stared at that line until my eyes ached. Then Harper sent one more text. Harper. She's going to contact your biggest client next. She already hinted she knows things about your business. My fingers went cold. Not fear, focus. Because that wasn't emotional sabotage. That was professional sabotage. And that's where I stopped being a guy in a breakup and become a man defending his livelihood. I called Mara. I told her everything Harper said. Mara didn't gasp, didn't dramatize. She just said, "Good. Now we act before she does." Within an hour, Mara sent a second notice. This one tighter, firmer, and addressed to Sloane directly. Any contact with my clients, vendors, or employer would be treated as intentional interference and harassment. Plain language, legal weight, no insults, no emotion. Just the boundary, reinforced. And then Mara added something that felt like the final click of a lock. "We also file a report regarding the unauthorized payment request," she said. "Not because we want a spectacle, because we want a record." A record. That word again. I realized something in that moment. Sloane didn't fear my anger. She feared my paper trail, because paper trails don't argue. They don't forget. They don't get tired. They just exist. That night, I got a knock at my door. Not a polite knock, a knock that says, "I'm used to being let in." I checked the camera feed. Sloane stood on my porch alone. No Graham, no phone filming, no performance. Just her, face pale, eyes sharp, hair pulled back like she was trying to look like the version of herself that used to soften me. I didn't open the door. I spoke through it. "What do you want?" I asked. Her voice came through thinner than I expected. "We need to talk?" "No," I said. "We don't." "Please," she said. "Just 2 minutes." I leaned my forehead against the wood, not because I was weak, because I wanted to feel how solid the boundary was. "You already said everything," I told her. "In the kitchen." She swallowed. I could hear it even through the door. "My job is on the line," she said. I didn't reply. "I didn't do what you think I did," she said quickly. "I didn't send anything to your client." I stayed quiet, because denial without proof is just noise. Her voice cracked, just slightly, like a seam tearing. "Graham did." That made my breath stop for half a second. Not shock, confirmation. Of course he did. Because men like Graham don't love women. They love leverage, Sloane went on, words rushing now. "He had my laptop for a night. He said he was helping me. He said you were trying to destroy me, and he was just protecting me." I stared at the door like it might turn transparent. "And now?" I asked. "He's blaming me," she whispered. "He said if I don't fix it, he'll make it worse." I exhaled slowly. So that's what this was. Not remorse, not love. A scared person finally realizing the monster she kept on a leash also had teeth. I kept my voice even. "Why are you telling me?" Silence. Then smaller. "Because you were right. I thought I could control everything." I didn't insult her. I didn't gloat. I just said, "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to talk to compliance," she said. "Tell them it wasn't me." I stared at the door, and the answer came clean and simple. "No," I said. Her voice sharpened. "Why not?" "Because you didn't protect me when it mattered," I said. "You protected your comfort." "You're punishing me," she snapped. I shook my head even though she couldn't see it. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm refusing to lie for you." Silence again. Then she said, quiet and desperate, "If you don't help me, he wins." I closed my eyes, and I said the truth that ended it. "This isn't about winning," I said. "This is about consequences. You chose him as a presence in your life. Now he's a problem in your life. That's not my job to fix." A sound came from the porch. Maybe her shifting, maybe her hand hitting the railing. "You're cold," she whispered. "No," I said. "I'm done." Her voice turned bitter. "So you just let me fall?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I just delivered the final line like a door clicking shut. "I'm not the ground you stand on anymore." She didn't respond. I watched the camera feed as she stood there for a long second, then stepped back. She looked at the door like she expected it to open by habit. It didn't. Then she turned and walked away into the dark. And here's the jaw-dropping part, the part that made my stomach tighten with a strange, quiet satisfaction. As she reached the sidewalk, a car pulled up. Graham's car. He didn't get out. He just leaned across the passenger seat and opened the door from inside like he still believed he owned her decisions. Sloane hesitated. Then, for the first time, she didn't get in. She closed the door on him. She walked the other direction. Graham sat there for a moment, stunned. Then he peeled off hard, tires chirping, the whole move loud and childish. Sloane never looked back, and I stood inside my quiet house, watching it on my screen, feeling the clean finality settle in. Not because she'd changed, but because she'd finally met the reality she'd been avoiding. I turned off the camera feed. I locked my phone. I walked to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. I drank it slowly, and I said it one last time, out loud to the empty room. "You keep your ex." I kept my peace. 3 days passed. No messages, no scenes, no last attempts. The silence was so clean it felt deliberate, like the story finally understood it was over. I was closing my laptop in my office when my phone rang. Unknown number. Not hidden. I answered. "This is Graham," the voice said. I didn't interrupt. People don't call when they're confident. They call when the ground under them starts to shift. "I want you to know," he continued. "I didn't plan for things to go this far." I leaned back in my chair, listening. "I thought she had control," he said. "I thought you'd just step aside." There it was, the assumption. "You expected me to disappear," I said calmly. Silence. "Yes," he admitted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't surprised. "I didn't disappear," I said. "I just stopped being convenient." He exhaled slowly. "I have problems now," he said. "Real ones." "That's not my responsibility," I replied. "She says you planned all of this." I smiled slightly. "No," I said. "I just stopped lying to myself." Another pause. "I'm not calling to threaten you," he said. "I just want this closed." "Good," I said. "Then listen carefully." My voice stayed even. "You don't come near me again. You don't use my name. You don't tell my story to anyone." "And you?" he asked. "And I said, don't involve myself in your consequences." He was quiet for a long moment. "You're cold," he finally said. "No," I replied. "I'm clear." Before hanging up, he said one last thing. "She lost more than she realizes." I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. "She only lost what she didn't protect," I said. "That's different." I ended the call. No rush, no shaking hands, just closure. That evening, I stood in my kitchen alone. The house felt normal again, not empty, not heavy, just mine. I poured a glass of water and drank it slowly, like I was teaching my body a new pace. No more reacting, no more explaining, no more waiting for the next hit. My phone stayed silent. No messages from her, no warnings from friends, no rumors asking for attention. I realized something important then. She didn't lose me when I walked out. She lost me when she assumed I wouldn't. That was the real moment everything shifted. I didn't need revenge anymore. I already had distance, and distance was stronger than any argument. I locked the door, turned off the lights, and went to bed without replaying anything in my head. No imaginary conversations, no unfinished sentences, just sleep. Because the story didn't need another chapter. It ended exactly where it should have, with me standing still and everything else finally moving on without me. A week passed, nothing happened. And that's how I knew it was truly over. No messages slipping through, no accidental encounters, no friends asking careful questions with sharp edges underneath. The silence wasn't tense anymore. It was empty in the right way. One evening, I stopped by my office later than usual. The building was almost dark, just a few floors still lit. I locked the door behind me and stood there for a second, listening to the hum of electricity and nothing else. That's when it hit me. Not relief, not victory, ownership, not of the situation, but of myself. I realized something simple and final. She no longer had access to anything that mattered. Not my time, not my reactions, not my explanations, not even my anger. People think revenge has to look sharp, loud, public. But real revenge is quiet. It's when someone loses the ability to affect you at all. I checked my phone out of habit. No missed calls, no blocked numbers trying again, no pressure. I put the phone face down on the desk and didn't think about it anymore. Because the truth was this, she didn't lose me when I walked away. She didn't lose me when the door stayed closed. She lost me when I stopped needing the story to end differently. I turned off the lights, locked the office, and walked out into the night without looking back at the building. No pause, no hesitation, just forward motion. That's when it was done. Not dramatically, not loudly, but completely.